Greetings! I am Herbert Erpaderp, and today I'm going to build this 28mm or 1/56th scale Tiger tank from Rubicon models. The back of the box gives us quite a bit of information about Tiger tanks, has a picture of included decals, and includes a basic painting guide, which is always nice. Opening the box we can see a few sprues and some instructions. These instructions are quite nice. They're printed on glossy paper, which is a bit unusual. Inside we find the decals, which come in a protective plastic bag. I think that's a great feature to protect them. Also, they look good. The instructions themselves are quite clear and detailed, and I think they adequately outline all the options available, and in this kit there are quite a few. All the sprues come individually packaged in plastic bags, which I think is a little bit wasteful, but I do like it. It keeps any parts that might be knocked off the sprue from going missing. I neglected to get a close-up of each sprue, but all the parts are neat and look good. Detail is quite excellent for the most part. The instructions suggest to begin with the tracks, so that's what I did. Obviously you start by clipping out the appropriate parts. Of note is that the innermost road wheels are reversible for use on early, mid and late Tiger variants, so pay attention to the direction they're facing. As I've decided to build an early Tiger, the late variant wheels should be facing outwards. Of course, test fitting all the parts before gluing is a great idea. The tracks go together really easily. My only gripe with the tracks at all is that the outside isn't really very well detailed. At this scale they could be, and the mould line is also kind of bad. Not at all difficult to fix though. Just take a knife and scrape the excess away with no need to worry about scraping tiny details off. And now the gluing begins. Be sure to position the inner road wheels correctly, then add some more glue for the next set. Then some more glue to hold the tracks themselves. You might notice that I forgot to add the inner part of the drive sprocket. It would barely be noticeable, but I'm still a numpty. Finally, the outer road wheels can be cut out, cleaned up where needed, and glued into place. Take care to ensure that they are in straight and not at odd angles, and you should end up with a nice neat set of tracks. Step 2 in the instructions is to assemble the lower hull. Cut out the parts required, and as usual test fit them and clean up any parts that might require it. First I glued down the exhaust covers. They are hard to put on incorrectly, but they still have some wiggle room, so make sure that you get them on straight. These exhaust cap things were a little tricky to attach. I did eventually get it, but perhaps tweezers should have been used. Then I apply the jack. Again, it's easy to place, but there is wiggle room, so make sure that it's straight. Then, the two track and lower hull assemblies are glued together, aided by these huge pin things, which I think is a great feature. Then the lower front plate can be glued on, as well as the rear of the hull. I then set this assembly aside to dry for a bit, as the instructions suggested to commence building the turret. There are actually 3 turret roofs to choose from, so make sure you choose the right one. This is the early version. The commander's cupola is a little bit lacking. There should at least be some vision slots, but other than that, it's great. Just be sure to select the correct hatches, and this part is very simple. The early turret has a pistol port on the left rear. Rather than making an entirely separate left turret side, Rubicon has cast a guide inside the part for drilling a hole to attach the pistol port if you need it. Pretty good design, I think. I didn't quite have the right size drill bit, so I used my knife to enlarge the hole slightly. Then it's a matter of test fitting, adding glue, and then putting the part on. It conforms to the turret's curve quite nicely. Next, the rear component of the gun mantlet is glued on. Then, after some test fitting, the turret sides can be glued together, taking care to make sure the gun mantlet is the right way up. The 2 holes should be on the left side. This is made nice and easy by guide pins. And then, the turret roof can be glued on. Finally, the storage box goes on the rear of the turret. Now to continue work on the hull. Of course, test fit before applying any glue, and then simply drop the hull top into place, making sure that there aren't any inappropriate gaps. Then we can test fit and glue the hull sides into place. It would have been nice if the skirting was a separate piece, but I can't really complain. Now comes the adding of details. Glue on the driver's vision block, being careful to get it the right way up, and add the machine gun. Note to self, when adding parts, make sure the camera can actually see it. Then add the headlamps. There are a few options here, so be careful to choose the correct one. Mine are positioned for early and mid tanks. Initial production will be further forward, and late production has a single headlamp in the centre. Then glue the spare track to the lower front plate, and that's the whole finished. Now to work on the gun barrel. It looks great, except there is no opening on the front. I fixed this by drilling a hole there, though I might have gone a little bit too big, and slightly off centre. I then made sure the camera barely saw me cleaning up the mould lines. Finally, I glued the barrel on. The connection is such that the gun can only be put in one way, so there's no need to worry about lopsided muzzle brakes. There are other details that could have been added to the turret, like spare track and smoke launchers. I lost one of the smoke launchers, so I omitted them. Overall, I think this is a great kit. The number of options leaves me with a lot of bits left over from my bits box, including tracks, roofs, and FIFO air filters. It was very easy to build and didn't take all that long, though it was a little bit more complicated than the resin kits I've built in the same scale, so it did take a while. Well over 2 hours of my derping about and being distracted by shiny things. It is quite well detailed, though I do think the completely smooth Commander's cupola is a little bit disappointing. It's not a deal breaker though, and the lack of detail in the tracks can be covered up with mud. Something interesting to note that some might be confused by is the road wheel arrangement. It differs between early and late Tigers. On early Tigers, the first road wheel was the outermost one, just as mine has been built. Late Tigers, the outermost wheel was second, as shown on the box art. I believe the reason for this change was mud and ice causing immobilization. I don't know when I'll get around to painting this tank, but when I do it should be quite fun. I think it will look awesome when complete. Eventually it will form part of my mighty German bolt action force. Hopefully this video has been helpful or interesting to you in some way. Subscribe if you'd like to see more. Thanks for watching. Farewell.